Okay, so I want you to picture a scene. We're in ancient China, maybe, around 500 BC, the spring and autumn period.
Yeah.
And there's this King Holu of Wu, and he's heard all these whispers about a military strategist, a guy named Sun Tzu.
This guy who's written this, this supposedly revolutionary book on warfare.
Exactly. So the king, he's powerful, he's probably a little bored, and he brings Sun Tzu to the palace.
Yeah.
He says, look, I've read your 13 chapters, very nice, but can you actually do it? Can you command troops?
It's the classic, does the theory work in practice test.
Yes, and Sun Tzu, he's totally confident. He says, yes, I can. So the king decides to throw him a curveball. He says, okay, great. Can you do it with women?
And this is where it gets interesting. He's not giving him the elite guard.
No.
He's giving him the palace harem. 180 concubines. I mean, these are women who have spent their entire lives in luxury. They're not soldiers.
It's a total setup. The king is absolutely trolling him. He's expecting this to be a complete farce.
He wants to see the great philosopher fail.
For sure. But Sun Tzu, he just agrees. He takes the 180 women out to the drill field, divides them into two companies, and then, and this is the key detail, he puts the king's two absolute favorite concubines in charge.
The favorites. The ones the king loves the most. So they have power, they have influence.
Right. Sun Tzu hands them spears, explains this incredible simple drill. When the drum beats, turn left. When it beats again, turn right. He even asks them, do you know your left from your right?
He's establishing a baseline, removing any possible excuse for confusion.
So he gives the signal, the drums beat, and what happens?
They just burst out laughing.
Of course they do. It's absurd. They're standing there with spears. They're giggling, probably looking up at the king on his balcony who's laughing right along with them.
Yeah, it's a big joke to everyone, except for Sun Tzu.
Mood shifts, doesn't it?
It does. He stops the drums and he says something that is like the entire foundation of his philosophy on leadership and accountability. He says, if words of command are not clear and distinct, if orders are not thoroughly understood, then the general is to blame.
Wow. Okay, so that's extreme ownership. He immediately takes the blame. My bad. I didn't explain it properly.
Precisely. So he doesn't yell, he doesn't get angry, he just explains it all over again. He demonstrates the moves, makes sure every single person understands, then he signals for the drum again. Left turn.
Yeah.
They laugh again, even louder this time.
They think it's a game. They're the king's favorites. They're untouchable. What's he going to do?
And this is where Sun Tzu's logic gets, chilling. He says, if words of command are not clear, the general is to blame. We've established that. But if his orders are clear and the soldiers nevertheless disobey, then it is the fault of their officers.
And the officers are the two favorite concubines.
The two favorites. Sun Tzu immediately orders them to be beheaded.
Wait, hold on. Beheaded. For real.
On the spot!
That seems, that's insane. It's a training drill in a courtyard.
Yeah.
You don't execute people for laughing during a drill. That feels like a psychopath's move, not a leader's.
From our perspective, absolutely, but you have to get inside his head. For Sun Tzu, war isn't a game, it's life and death. It's the road to safety or to ruin. If discipline can't be enforced here, in the safety of a courtyard, how can you possibly expect it to hold on a chaotic battlefield where thousands of lives are at stake?
He's making an example.
The ultimate example. He's demonstrating the absolute non-negotiable price of authority.
So the king is watching all this from his pavilion.
And he completely freaks out. The text says he was greatly alarmed. He sends a messenger sprinting down to the field. Stop! We are now quite satisfied as to the general's ability. If we lose these two concubines, our meat and drink will lose their savor.
Wait, our meat and drink will lose their savor.
There you...
That's his argument. My food won't taste as good.
That's his argument. He's desperate. But Sun Tzu just sends the messenger back with this incredible line. He says, having once received His Majesty's commission to be the general of his forces, there are certain commands of His Majesty which, acting in that capacity, I am unable to accept.
Whoa, that is a power move. Yeah. He's telling the king, you put me in charge on this field, your authority doesn't apply. Mine does.
And then he has their heads cut off.
Jesus.
He executes them. Then he appoints the next two women in line as the new commanders. He signals for the drum, and the text says the women went through the drills with perfect accuracy and precision, not venturing to utter a sound.
Yeah, because the laughter was gone. The game was over.
Terror creates focus. And that story, right there, that's our way in. Today we're doing a deep dive into the art of war, but not the fortune cookie version.
Right, not the quotes you see on a motivational poster in a boardroom.
No, we're looking at it as a brutal, practical, and systematic manual for managing conflict. It's a system.
A system. I like that. So how are we going to break this system down?
Well, based on the text itself, it really feels like it falls into three main pillars. First, and this is maybe the most important part, is cost management. Sun Tzu is obsessed with the economics of war.
Okay, cost.
Second is preparation. The calculations, the intelligence gathering, the spies, basically how you win the war before you even start fighting.
And third?
Execution. When you actually have to move and fight, how do you do it with maximum efficiency and deception?
I love that. Cost, preparation, execution. So let's start with the money. Because I have to admit, when I was reading Chapter 2, Waging War, it totally caught me off guard. I was expecting all this talk about glory and honor.
And instead you got an accountant's ledger.
I really did.
Yeah.
He starts with the bill. It's like he's saying, before we talk about anything else, do you have any idea how much this is going to cost you?
It's the first barrier to entry. He lays out this bill of materials for an army of 100,000 men.
Let's run through it. He says you need 1,000 swift chariots.
1,000 heavy chariots.
And provisions to carry them 1,000 lives. Which is, what, about 300 miles? That's a huge supply line.
A massive supply line. But then he gets into these tiny details that are just brilliant. He mentions glue and paint.
Yes. Small items such as glue and paint. I mean, who thinks of that?
He's accounting for vehicle maintenance, for armor repair. He talks about the entertainment of guests, so your diplomatic budget. He's thought of everything, and he puts a number on it.
1,000 ounces of silver per day.
1,000 ounces of silver a day. In that economy, that is a staggering, mind-blowing amount of money.
It's basically the entire state's surplus, right?
It is, and his whole point is that this money isn't just magic. It comes from somewhere. It comes from the people. This is where he talks about the domestic ripple effect. He says if you mobilize an army of 100,000...
You're not just taking 100,000 people out of the workforce.
No, you are impeding the labor of 700,000 families.
700,000. That's a huge portion of your productive population.
Think about it. All the able-bodied men are gone. Who's farming the fields? Who's making the goods? Nobody. So your entire domestic economy grinds to a halt. But your consumption.
Your consumption goes through the roof because the army has to eat.
Right. And he even connects this to inflation, which is just fascinating for a text this old. He says the proximity of an army causes prices to go up.
It's pure supply and demand.
It's literally supply and demand. 2,500 years ago, you move 100,000 hungry soldiers into a small province. They buy up all the grain, all the livestock. Suddenly, the local villagers have to pay 10 times as much for a loaf of bread. Sun Tzu says the people's substance is drained away.
And when the people run out of money, the state gets desperate for more.
Which leads to tax hikes. Heavy exactions, he calls them. He paints this bleak picture of tax collectors just stripping households bare. He even gives a number. He says 7/10 of the people's income will be dissipated.
A 70% tax, essentially.
Or worse, 70% of their actual substance. Their food, their animals, their tools. And the government isn't doing much better. He says 60% of the state's revenue goes directly to just replacing broken equipment, broken chariots, worn-out horses, arrows, armor.
It's a money pit. It just consumes everything.
It consumes everything, and it ruins the victor almost as much as the vanquished.
So, if the economics are this catastrophic, what's the takeaway? Just don't go to war.
That's option A. But if you absolutely must, the real takeaway is speed. This is his core economic thesis. He says flat out, there is no instance of a country having benefited from prolonged warfare.
No instance. That's an absolute statement.
He's completely unequivocal. He says he has heard of stupid haste in war, but he has never, ever seen clever long delays.
I love that phrase. Stupid haste is better than clever delay. He'd rather you be a bit of a clumsy idiot, but fast, than a strategic genius who takes forever.
Because time is literally money. It's your entire economy burning on a pyre every single day. If you delay, your weapons get dull, your soldiers' morale evaporates, you exhaust your strength laying siege to some fortress, and while all that is happening...
Your enemies are watching?
Exactly. This is the nightmare scenario. He says, other chieftains will spring up to take advantage of your extremity. You're so focused on fighting enemy A, you've bled yourself dry, and suddenly enemy B, who's been watching from the sidelines, sees you're weak and just walks in and takes over your capital.
You make yourself a target for everyone else.
You do. It's a catastrophic failure.
But he does offer one way to mitigate these costs. A a supply chain hack, I guess you call it. And it's pretty ruthless.
Oh, yeah. Bring war material with you from home, but forage on the enemy.
Steal their food.
It's more than just stealing. It's about the math. This is one of the most brilliant little calculations in the book. He says, 1 cartload of the enemy's provisions is equivalent to 20 of your own.
Okay, I want to unpack that. Why 20? It's not like their food is 20 times more nutritious.
No, it's about the cost of transport, the physics of logistics. Imagine you have a supply wagon at your capital, and the front line is 300 miles away. You have the wagon, the driver, and the ox pulling it.
Right.
To make that 300-mile journey, the driver and the ox have to eat. By the time they get to the front line, they've consumed, say, half the food in the wagon just to get there.
And they still have to get back.
So they have to reserve even more food for the return journey. The actual amount of food delivered to the soldiers at the front might be only a tiny fraction of what you started with.
So you burn 19 pounds of food to deliver 1 pound of food.
That's the idea. But if you can capture 1 pound of food from an enemy granary that's right next to the battlefield, that's 1 pound of pure, unadulterated supply. You didn't have to pay the transport cost. That's why it's worth 20 of your own.
That makes so much sense. You're not just getting supplies, you're eliminating the logistical burden.
And he says you have to incentivize this behavior. He talks about capturing enemy chariots. If your soldiers capture 10 chariots, you don't just give them to the general. You find the first guy who captured 1 and you give him a big reward.
And gamify it. You make it a competition.
Exactly. And then, and this is a great psychological trick, he says you take those captured chariots, you change the flags, and you mix them in with your own.
Mixed flag tactic.
Right. Now, 2 things happen. 1, your army instantly looks bigger. And 2, the enemy soldiers see their own equipment, their own flags being used against them. How demoralizing is that?
It's devastating. But what about the soldiers you capture? I mean, standard practice back then was either kill them or enslave them, right?
For sure. But Sun Tzu says no. He says the captured soldiers should be kindly treated and kept.
Kindly treated.
Oh!
That feels out of character of the guy who just beheaded 2 women for laughing.
It's not about being soft. It's pure pragmatism. He says this is called using the conquered foe to augment one's own strength. A dead enemy is just a body you have to bury. But a captured enemy who you feed and treat well, that's a new soldier. Or, at the very least, a new porter to carry your supplies so your own soldiers stay fresh.
So every single decision, from the most brutal to the most seemingly humane, it all comes back to a single question.
Does this help me win faster and cheaper?
It's all about efficiency, which I guess leads us perfectly into the second pillar. If war is this insanely expensive and this risky, you can't afford to be wrong. You can't guess.
You cannot guess. You need as close to absolute certainty as you can get, and that requires preparation.
The temple calculations. I love that term. He says the general who wins a battle makes many calculations in his temple where the battle is fought.
The temple is the war room. It's the command center. It's where you run the simulations. Sun Tzu genuinely believed that you could know the outcome of a war before a single soldier even put on his boots.
And he gives us the framework for that simulation, the 5 constant factors.
These are the variables for your equation. The first one is the moral law.
Okay, moral law sounds a bit spiritual. Is he talking about who's on the right side of God or something?
Not at all. In his context, the moral law is about the unity between the people and their ruler. Are they on the same page? Are the people willing to follow their leader into battle, to face death, because they believe in the cause? If the people despise their king, you've already failed on factor 1.
You're starting with a massive disadvantage.
Okay.
Factor 2, heaven.
This is basically timing and environment. Night and day, cold and heat, the seasons. Are you planning to invade Russia in the middle of winter? That's a failure on the heaven factor.
Right. Don't fight the weather. Factor 3, earth.
Geography. Terrain. How far is it? Is the ground open plains or narrow, deadly passes?
Factor 4 is the commander.
Right, and he's very specific here. He lists 5 virtues: wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness.
I noticed benevolence and strictness are right there together. Seems like a contradiction.
But it's about the balance, isn't it? If you're all benevolence, your troops are spoiled and useless. If you're all strictness, they hate you and will desert. You have to be both. You have to be the parent who is loving, but also enforces the rules.
Like the concubine story. He was strict, but then he says to treat prisoners kindly. It's that balance.
It's always that balance. And the last factor, number 5, is method and discipline.
This sounds like the boring stuff.
It is the boring stuff. It's logistics, the chain of command, supply routes, managing the budget. It's the unglamorous back-end work that actually makes an army function.
So you take these 5 factors for your side and you take them for the enemy's side and you just compare them on a checklist.
It's a pre-mortem. Which ruler has more of the moral law? Which commander is more capable? Which army is stronger? He says, by means of these 7 considerations, I can forecast victory or defeat. And if the calculations in the temple tell you you're going to lose,
You don't fight.
you don't fight. You stay home. You find another way.
But to do those calculations, you need good data. You can't just guess if the enemy commander is benevolent. You need to actually know.
Which brings us to one of the most important chapters in the whole book, Chapter 13, the use of spies.
I love this chapter because he completely flips the script on the morality of spying. We tend to think of it as this, dirty, dishonorable business.
Sun Tzu says the exact opposite. He says, look, we've already established that war bankrupts the state and destroys hundreds of thousands of families. If you choose to remain ignorant of the enemy's condition because you're too cheap or too honorable to pay for spies, he calls that the height of inhumanity.
That's such a powerful framing. Being noble and not spying is actually the more evil choice because it leads to longer wars and more death.
Exactly. Foreknowledge is the most humane weapon you have, and he's very clear. This knowledge doesn't come from praying to spirits or looking at tea leaves. It doesn't come from gut feelings. It must come from other human beings who know the enemy's situation.
And he lays out this whole intelligence network, the 5 classes of spies. It's like something out of a modern spy thriller.
It's the blueprint for basically all modern intelligence. First, you have local spies. Simple enough. You go into the enemy district and you pay the locals for information.
Then inward spies. These are officials on the enemy side that you turn.
Right. He says to look for the ones who are talented but have been passed over for promotion, or the ones who are greedy. Find their weakness and exploit it.
Third, and he says this is the most important, is the converted spy, the double agent.
The double agent is key. This is an enemy spy that you've captured. But instead of killing them, you bribe them, you treat them well, you turn them, and you send them back.
Why are they the most important?
Because they're your primary channel for disinformation. You feed them false information to take back to their masters. They're also your best source for recruiting new spies on the inside.
Which leads to the 4th type, the one with the most terrifying name, the doomed spy.
Yeah, this one's pretty dark.
When I first read that, I thought it meant like a spy on a suicide mission, an assassin or something.
It's actually much more psychologically disturbing. A doomed spy is one of your own spies. You deliberately give them false information, a huge strategic lie, and you make sure they believe it's the absolute truth. Then you arrange for them to be caught by the enemy.
You want them to get caught.
You need them to get caught because when they're caught, they're going to be interrogated, probably tortured, and under torture, they'll confess to the information you gave them. But because they genuinely believe the lie is the truth, their confession will be passionate and convincing. The enemy will buy it completely.
And then the enemy acts on that bad intel, realizes it was a lie, and
They kill the spy, hence the doomed spy.
wow, that is just incredibly cold-blooded. You're knowingly sacrificing your own agent.
It is. But again, Sun Tzu would do the brutal math. Is it the life of one spy worth it if it saves an entire army of 10,000 men from walking into an ambush?
It's the ultimate trolley problem.
It is. And finally, you have the 5th class, the surviving spies. These are the ones who just do the regular job. Go in, get the intel, and come back alive. He says when you have all 5 of these working at once, nobody can figure out your network. He calls it the divine manipulation of the threads.
You're a puppet master. Okay, so you have the data from your spies, you've run the numbers in the temple, now you have to look at the battlefield itself, the terrain.
Right. Chapters 10 and 11, he says the natural formation of the country is the soldier's best ally. You have to know how to read the ground. He lists 6 types.
Let's touch on a few. He talks about entangling ground.
This is a classic trap. It's ground that is easy to get into, but very difficult to get out of.
Like a narrow canyon or a marsh.
Exactly. He says if the enemy is unprepared, sure, go in and attack. But if they're ready for you, and you attack and you fail, you can't retreat. You're stuck. It's a disaster.
What about precipitous heights?
Pretty straightforward. High ground. The rule is you occupy the high, sunny spots, and you wait for the enemy to come to you. You never, ever attack an enemy that's on high ground. Let them make the mistake of climbing up to you.
There's also this amazing section on just reading the signs, looking at the enemy army from a distance and deducing what they're doing. It's like he's Sherlock Holmes.
It's pure observation and deduction. He says, dust rising in a high column. What's that tell you?
He says that's chariots on the move.
Right. Lots of wheels, lots of horse hooves, kicking dust straight up. But if you see dust that's low and wide...
That's infantry. Thousands of shuffling feet.
Yep. What about birds rising in their flight from a patch of woods?
Ambush. There were soldiers hiding in there and they startled the birds.
Exactly. Or my favorite one, soldiers leaning on their spears.
They're starving. They're out of food and too weak to stand up straight.
You can tell their supply situation from miles away just by their posture. Or what if they send envoys to you with lots of compliments and humble words?
They want a truce.
Which means they're probably playing for time, they're weak, and they need a moment to regroup. Sun Tzu is so cynical. He warns, humble words and increased preparations are signs that the enemy is about to advance. Never listen to what they say, only watch what they do.
Okay, so this is incredible. We've covered the cost, which tells us war is ruinous. We've covered preparation, which is how you win before you fight. Now we have to get to the third pillar, execution. Your army is finally on the move. How do you actually do it?
Well, the first question in execution is, do you actually have to fight?
Right. Chapter 3. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting.
That is the ultimate goal. He gives a clear hierarchy of what you should attack. The best thing to attack, number one, is the enemy's plans.
Stop them before they even start.
Disrupt their strategy. The second best thing is to prevent the junction of their forces. Use diplomacy to break up their alliances, isolate them.
So wait, actually fighting their army in the field? That's only the third best option?
It's already a partial failure of strategy if you have to resort to a pitched battle. And the absolute worst option, the bottom of the list.
Besieging walled cities.
He despises sieges. He just calls it the worst policy.
He describes it, and it sounds absolutely miserable. He talks about preparing siege engines and mantlets.
And he says it takes 3 months just to build the equipment, then another 3 months to build the earthen ramps up against the walls. So you've just spent 6 months with your entire army sitting in one place, literally eating through your treasury.
Doing nothing productive.
And the general, he gets frustrated. He gets impatient. And Sun Tzu says he will launch his men at the walls like swarming ants.
That's such a visceral image. Swarming ants.
And what's the result? 1/3 of his men are slain and the town is still untaken. A complete and utter catastrophe born from impatience.
So avoid sieges at all costs. But if you are in the field and you have to fight, he talks about creating momentum. And he uses these two concepts, Cheng and Qi.
Direct and indirect, this is often misunderstood. It's not just about a frontal attack versus a flanking attack. It's about how you apply energy.
Explain that.
The Cheng, the direct force, is the one the enemy sees. It's your main battle line. Its job is to engage the enemy and fix them in place, to hold their attention.
There's the setup.
It's the setup. The Qi, the indirect force, is the surprise. It's the flanking maneuver, the cavalry charge from the woods, the unexpected element that they don't see coming. It's what delivers the knockout blow.
It's like a boxer's jab and cross. The jab, Cheng, keeps them occupied and sets them up.
And the cross, Qi, that they don't see is what knocks them out. And a master, Sun Tzu says, is constantly cycling between the two. The possibilities are infinite, like the sun and the moon.
He uses this great physics analogy for it, the rolling log or the round stone.
This is one of the keys to the whole book. He says, look at the nature of a log. On flat ground, it's stationary. On a steep slope, it moves. A square stone will stop. A round stone will roll.
It's just simple physics.
Right, so a good commander doesn't just rely on the brute force of his men. He creates a situation where his army is like a round stone at the top of a 1,000-foot mountain.
So the potential energy is immense. Once it starts moving, it's unstoppable.
Exactly. The momentum does the work. Not because every soldier is a superhero, but because of the strategic position you've created.
And to create that position, you have to use deception. All warfare is based on deception.
When able to attack, we must seem unable. When near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. This is where he brings in the water analogy in chapter 6. It's beautiful, but it's also deeply tactical.
Military tactics are like unto water.
Think about it. What does water do? It naturally avoids high places and flows downwards to low places.
Yeah.
In war, you should avoid the enemy's strengths, the high ground, and strike at their weaknesses, the low ground.
And water has no fixed shape.
It has no constant shape. It conforms to the vessel that contains it. Sun Tzu says a heaven-born captain is the same way. He constantly modifies his tactics in relation to the enemy. There is no rigid playbook.
So if you're formless, the enemy has no idea what to prepare for.
He has no idea where to defend. If he strengthens his front,
Then his rear must be weak.
if he strengthens his left flank,
His right flank is exposed.
and if he tries to send reinforcements everywhere to be strong everywhere,
He is actually weak everywhere.
you've forced him to dilute his strength to nothing. It's brilliant.
Okay, but moving this formless, water-like army must be a nightmare. He has a lot to say about maneuvering, and he gives this big warning about forced marches.
Yeah, this goes right back to the cost in physics. He asks, what happens if you force march your army about 30 miles nonstop to try and gain an advantage?
You'd think, well, you get there first, you win.
Sun Tzu says you will lose. Your strongest, fastest troops will get there first, but your commanders will be with them and exhausted. Your weaker troops will fall behind. He says only 1/10 of your army will actually arrive at the destination.
So you show up with 10% of your army totally gassed and without your supply train.
An army without its baggage train is lost. You're a sitting duck. You get wiped out. If you march 50 lives, he says, maybe half your army will arrive. You have to constantly balance the need for speed with the need for cohesion.
And to maintain that cohesion, he talks about the four spirits. This section is so poetic, but it's pure tactical doctrine.
The famous samurai Takeda Shingen put this on his battle standards. Let your rapidity be that of the wind,
Speed,
your compactness that of the forest.
order, and discipline.
In raiding and plundering, be like fire.
Aggression,
And in immovability, be like a mountain.
defense, wind, forest, fire, mountain. It covers every single phase of a battle.
Every phase, it's a complete tactical mindset.
Okay, we've covered the mechanics of war, but I want to spend our last few minutes on the human element, on leadership, because none of this works without a commander who understands psychology.
Absolutely. And one of his most fascinating psychological insights is the idea of desperate ground.
This is from chapter 11. Throw your soldiers into positions whence there is no escape, and they will prefer death to flight.
We call it burning the boats. It's totally counterintuitive. You'd think soldiers need a safe line of retreat to have good morale. Sun Tzu says the opposite. If they know they can run away, part of their mind will always be thinking about running away.
But if you put them with their backs to a river with the enemy in front of them,
There is no escape. The only way to survive is to go forward and fight. He says on desperate ground, soldiers lose their fear. They will put forth their uttermost strength. It's a high-stakes gamble, but he says it unlocks a level of performance you can't get any other way.
but it's not all about just trapping your own men. He lists the 5 dangerous faults of a general. These are the character flaws that will get you and your army destroyed.
Yeah, let's run through them. Number 1, recklessness. The hot-headed general who just wants to charge without thinking, that leads to destruction.
Number 2, cowardice. Obviously, that leads to capture.
Number 3, a hasty temper.
This one feels so modern. One that can be provoked by insults.
Think about that. If I'm your enemy and I know you have a short fuse, my whole strategy is to provoke you. I'll send messengers to insult you. I'll taunt you. I'll get you so angry that you lose your cool and make a stupid mistake.
You see that in politics, in business, everywhere. People baiting their opponents into an unforced error.
It's a timeless tactic. Number 4, a delicacy of honor. Being too sensitive to shame, making bad decisions just to save face.
And number 5, this is the one that really got me, over-solicitude for his men.
Wait, caring about your men is a fault. Caring too much is. If you're so worried about them getting hurt that you become hesitant, that you can't bring yourself to order an attack when it's necessary, you're paralyzed. You've become, as he might say, their mother, not their general.
It's that balance again. He says you must treat your soldiers like your beloved sons.
Regard your soldiers as your children, and they will follow you into the deepest valleys. He says they will stand by you even unto death. But if you are indulgent, but unable to make your authority felt, then they are like spoilt children. They are useless for any practical purpose.
So you have to love them, but they also have to know that if they laugh during the drill, the sword comes out.
That is the paradox of command in Sun Tzu's world. The sheathed sword, as it's called.
As we're wrapping this up, I want to circle back to something that really struck me. A final idea that sort of turns our entire concept of a hero on its head.
You're talking about the clever fighter.
I am. You know, in movies and books, the great general is always the one who's in a desperate situation, outnumbered 10-1, giving a heroic speech in the pouring rain, and then pulls off some miraculous last-second victory against all odds.
Sun Tzu would say that general is an amateur.
He would. He says the truly clever fighter, the master, is the one who wins with ease.
Hence, his victories bring him neither reputation for wisdom nor credit for courage.
That's just a mind-bending idea. The better you are, the less credit you get.
Because you did all the work beforehand. You did the calculations in the temple. You used your spies to gain an advantage. You maneuvered your army into a position of such overwhelming superiority, that round stone at the top of the mountain, that the victory was a foregone conclusion.
So to an outside observer, the battle itself looks boring. It looks inevitable. There was no drama.
No desperate last stand, no heroic charge, just quiet, professional, overwhelming execution. The battle was won before it even started.
So I guess that's the thought we want to leave you with. In your own challenges, in your career, your projects, your life, what kind of victory are you chasing? Are you drawn to the glory of the hard-fought battle? Do you secretly want the crisis so you can be the hero who solves it?
Or are you aiming for the quiet excellence of the strategist who prevents the crisis from ever happening? The one whose victory is so smooth and so inevitable it goes almost unnoticed. Do you want the reputation for courage, or do you just want to win?
Sun Tzu says, choose the boring victory. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It was a pleasure.
We'll see you on the next one.